Have you ever been like sitting in traffic or just staring at a terrifyingly high credit card bill or dealing with an absolute disaster at work,
Oh, yeah.
right? And then someone very well-meaning, usually someone who, just got back from a yoga retreat or something.
Yeah, truly.
Yeah, they look at you and they say, you create your own reality.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that is rough.
It is. Because if you're anything like me, you just look around at whatever stressful, chaotic situation you are currently standing in and you think, why on earth would I actively create this?
Exactly.
It's incredibly frustrating. Honestly, it almost feels like an accusation.
It absolutely does. I mean, it feels like you're standing in a flooded basement and someone is just cheerfully telling you that you manifested the burst pipe.
Yes.
It completely bypasses the real, visceral experience of human frustration. And when you're in the middle of a crisis, I mean, the last thing you want is a metaphysical guilt trip.
Which is exactly the friction we are diving into today.
Yeah.
So, welcome to the deep dive. If you've ever felt overwhelmed by the pressure to just, think positive, you are definitely in the right place.
You really are.
We are jumping into a really fascinating piece of source material today. It's a 2023 transcript from a YouTube channel called AH 11.11, and it features the teachings of Abraham Hicks.
Right.
Now, a really quick disclaimer for you listening. Our mission today is absolutely not to debate the metaphysics of the universe or, tell you what to believe spiritually.
Not at all.
No. Our goal is to unpack the incredibly practical, surprisingly mechanical, and honestly, sometimes shocking emotional framework that's presented in this text.
Yeah, it's a wildly different approach.
It really is. So we're going to explore what the source calls vibrational relativity, why seeking advice from your most trusted loved ones might actually be short-circuiting your life, and why feeling completely enraged and seeking revenge might just be a profound psychological achievement.
It's a framework that requires you to completely throw out conventional wisdom about emotional health. I mean, to set the stage, the foundational premise of this material is that the universe is constantly expanding.
Right.
And it's doing so based entirely on our personal preferences. So according to this framework, your primary job in life isn't to hustle.
Thank goodness.
Right. It isn't to suffer nobly for a cause, and it isn't to fix everything that's broken. Your only real job is to energetically catch up to your own desires.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because before we can understand why we feel so stuck or why we feel bad, we really have to understand the mechanics of how a desire is even born in the first place.
Exactly. You have to start at the beginning.
Right. So the source introduces this concept called contrast. And it frames contrast not as a punishment, but as a completely necessary mechanism.
Yeah, it's functional.
Very functional. Contrast is basically all the stuff in your day that you do not want. The traffic jams, the arguments with your partner, the email from your boss.
The flooded basement.
The flooded basement, exactly. The argument here is that moving through these difficult contrasting experiences forces us to automatically sift through data. And out of that very natural sorting process, we involuntarily launch what the text beautifully calls a rocket of desire.
And, the imagery there is very deliberate. A rocket of desire implies something fast, forceful, and upward moving.
Right. It's immediate.
Completely immediate. The underlying mechanism is that the very millisecond you experience something you don't like, let's say you experience a moment of profound financial scarcity, a preference for abundance is violently born within you.
You don't even have to think about it.
You don't even have to articulate it, it just happens. And here is where the framework introduces its core mechanic. Source, which is the term used here for universal energy or well-being, immediately matches that preference.
Okay.
Source rides that rocket. The new reality where you have that abundance is instantly created on a vibrational level.
But the problem is we don't ride the rocket.
No, we definitely do not.
Right. Source instantly ships the order, so to speak, but we are still stuck on the ground entirely focused on the lack of it. It honestly reminds me of ordering a life-changing product online.
Oh, I like this analogy.
Yeah, so the warehouse instantly packs it and ships it. It is out the door. But instead of trusting the process, you are sitting at your computer constantly refreshing the tracking page.
Over and over.
Over and over. Doubting it will ever arrive, wondering if you even entered the right address, stressing about whether the mail carrier will lose it.
Right, the package is on its way, but your emotional state is pure anxiety.
Exactly. And that gap, the difference between the reality of the shipped package and the anxiety of your current mood, is what the source calls vibrational relativity.
That's a highly accurate way to visualize the mechanism. I mean, vibrational relativity is simply the frequency gap between where your thoughts currently are and where your newly born desire is.
It's the distance between the two.
Exactly. And the source argues that this exact gap is where all human suffering lives. There's a fascinating point made here that completely strips away the morality we usually attach to our feelings.
How so?
Well, it emphasizes that when you feel bad, you aren't tapping into some universal source of evil or, like, source of badness. There is no dark energy attacking you.
Oh, that's reassuring.
Right. Feeling bad is literally just the physical sensation of moving away from thriving. Your desire is moving forward, and your current thoughts are dragging you backward.
So it's just tension.
It's just tension. The tension between those two opposing forces is what we experience as negative emotion.
And society does a terrible job of helping us navigate that tension. The material points out that if you actually decide to just be cheerful and move toward your desire, especially when everyone around you thinks you should be mourning a situation, people will actively try to pull you back down.
Oh, absolutely.
They'll call you a Pollyanna. They'll say you're completely out of touch with reality.
Which really reveals a massive societal bias. There is immense pressure to feel bad when things go wrong, as if suffering is like the required payment for a difficult situation.
Right, like you have to pay your dues in misery.
Exactly. If you lose your job, society expects you to perform anxiety for a few months just to prove you take it seriously.
Yeah.
But this framework is mechanically adamant. You cannot focus on the things that make you feel bad and simultaneously move toward the thriving reality you just asked for. It is energetically impossible to go in two directions at once.
Right, which leads to this exhausting mental tug of war we all experience. The material says that when we catch ourselves focusing on the negative, we shouldn't beat ourselves up. We just need to make what they call a legal U-turn.
A legal U-turn.
Yeah. But I have to be honest, making that U-turn sounds a lot easier on paper than it is in practice. I mean, if I'm spiraling about a credit card bill, how exactly am I supposed to just U-turn my thoughts? How does this framework describe the actual process of getting on board with our own desires?
What's fascinating here is how accurately the text maps out the cognitive dissonance we experience during that exact spiral.
It really breaks it down.
It breaks down this maddening cycle we put ourselves through. So you launch the desire for financial freedom, but your current reality says you're broke. So naturally, you don't believe the desire.
Right.
But you want to believe it, so you aggressively look for evidence. You find a tiny bit of evidence, so you sort of believe it for an hour, but then the physical bill arrives in the mail, and you doubt it again.
Boom, right back down.
Exactly. Then you try really, really hard to force yourself to believe it. You start looking at other people who have money, trying to absorb their belief. It is this incredibly taxing mental gymnastics routine.
Just visualizing that cycle makes my brain tired.
Yeah.
That's exactly what happens. You try to force the belief, but the underlying vibration is still just pure doubt.
Precisely. Because you are trying to jump across the gap of vibrational relativity all at once, which you just can't do.
So what's the alternative?
The framework argues that soothing this resistance, inch by inch, is the only real work of your life. The work isn't the physical labor of working 3 jobs to pay the bill.
Oh, wow.
The work is internal. It is gradually moving through that cycle of doubt, softening it bit by bit, until you finally reach a point where the desire simply feels natural to you.
And then what?
The moment you truly believe it, the gap closes. But as the universe is always expanding, the moment you close that gap, you'll eventually encounter new contrast, launch a brand new rocket of desire, and the cycle continues.
It's an endless process of expansion.
Exactly.
But let's look at where this goes wrong. Because if the process is just about experiencing contrast, launching a desire, and then doing the internal work to slowly believe in it, well, wait, why are so many people walking around completely miserable?
That is the big question.
Right. And the material points a massive finger right at our instinct to outsource our desires. It talks about how the second we feel the discomfort of that gap we just discussed, instead of checking our own internal compass, we panic.
We completely panic.
We panic and we look outward. We ask, should I want this? What does my mother think? What does my church think? Is this a practical career move?
And the text identifies that specific habit-seeking external validation to soothe internal doubt as the ultimate trap.
The ultimate trap.
Yeah, because when you hold a new desire, it feels vulnerable. You don't have physical evidence for it yet. So naturally, you want someone you trust to look at you and say, yes, that's a brilliant idea, so you can borrow their confidence.
Right, you want a shortcut.
Exactly. But there is a very telling anecdote in the transcript about a woman who met a new partner. The relationship was going great right up until he found out what her actual life goals were. And he disapproved.
Oh, no.
And her reaction to his disapproval wasn't to say, well, we aren't a match, time to move on. Her reaction was, I'm lost. I don't know which way I should go anymore.
She completely subjugated her own internal rocket of desire to his external opinion. She let his reaction just completely override her own preference.
She did.
And the material says we do this all the time. We accept these long lists of things you're supposed to want from our teachers, our parents, and society, things we haven't actually given birth to through our own lived contrast.
Right.
And when you try to fulfill a desire you didn't even launch yourself, you end up feeling completely hollow. The text uses this great phrase for it, spinning out there in Yuma, just totally lost, wandering in the desert without a map.
The realization here, as noted by a couple mentioned in the text, Jerry and his partner, is profound. Once a desire hatches within you from your own lived experience, you have absolutely no choice but to get up to speed with it.
You can't put it back in the box.
You cannot unhatch it. You can try to ignore it to please your family. You can bury it in a practical job. But if you do not energetically catch up to the thing you naturally launched, you will permanently block your own joy.
Let me stop you there, though. I really need to push back on this idea, because listening to this, a completely rational person might think, wait a minute, isn't seeking advice from mentors or loved ones just, being a responsible human being?
It sounds like it, yeah.
Right. I mean, if I want to quit my stable corporate job to become an independent podcaster, shouldn't I talk to a financial advisor? Shouldn't I consult my spouse? Why does this framework treat external opinions like they are an active existential threat to our well-being?
It's a great question, and it really requires separating physical action from energetic alignment.
Yep. How so?
Consulting a financial advisor on the how of a business plan is fine. That's action. But asking the advisor if you should want the goal in the first place is where the damage happens.
I see.
If you need them to validate the wanting, you lose your compass. The text describes this as a tragic early disassociation from our internal guidance system. When you rely on others to validate your emotional alignment, your journey becomes, and this is a key phrase, no more quantifiable.
No more quantifiable, meaning you literally lose the ability to measure your own progress.
Exactly. Think of it mechanically. If your internal compass is tuned to your own true north, you can always tell if you are off course.
Right.
But if you calibrate your compass to whatever the person standing next to you thinks is north, and then they leave, and you ask a new person and the needle spins to match their opinion, you have zero baseline.
That sounds exhausting.
It is. You are constantly adjusting to shifting external forces. You cannot quantify if you are moving closer to your desire or further away because the target keeps moving based on who you ask.
You are basically trying to check your own temperature using someone else's thermometer.
That is a perfect way to put it.
Of course you feel crazy. But this brings us to a massive problem. What happens if you're listening to this right now and you realize, wow, I've been using someone else's thermometer for 20 years?
Yeah, that's a tough realization.
You are completely disassociated from your internal guidance. You're spinning out in Yuma, and you find yourself in a state of deep, paralyzing depression. How do you find your way back? Because this is where the source material offers what I consider to be its most controversial and frankly shocking advice.
It is definitely a shock to the system, especially if you view emotional health through the lens of traditional self-help or, forced positivity.
Right. So the text brings up Joseph Campbell. He was a famous mythologist who gave the world the iconic advice to follow your bliss.
Mm-hmm.
We've all seen that printed on coffee mugs.
Oh, everywhere.
It sounds beautiful. But the material rightly points out a massive mechanical flaw with that advice. When you are deep in the pit of depression, you can't even get a whiff of bliss.
The gap of vibrational relativity is simply too wide.
It's huge.
If depression is vibrating at a frequency of, say, 10, and bliss is vibrating at a frequency of 10,000, you cannot jump that gap. It is a mechanical impossibility to go from total despair to genuine joy in one leap.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because the text explicitly directs people who are in fear or depression to stop reaching for bliss and instead intentionally head toward revenge.
Yeah.
And then from revenge to climb up to anger and then to frustration. Let's just hit the brakes here for a second. Is this framework seriously advocating for revenge? Is it telling a listener who feels wronged to go out and actively ruin someone's life to feel better.
No, and we have to be incredibly clear about the caveat provided in the transcript. The text explicitly says don't spend enough time there that you act on it. Just think about it.
Okay, that's a crucial distinction.
Extremely crucial. It frames revenge and anger not as behavioral lifestyles, but as internal, stabilizing stepping stones on an emotional scale.
Yeah.
It is purely about shifting your internal frequency.
Okay, so it's a thought exercise. But why anger? We are conditioned from birth to believe that anger is a toxic, destructive emotion that we need to suppress immediately. Why would a spiritual framework tell you to seek it out?
Because you have to look at the psychology and the mechanics of the emotions involved. Yeah. What is depression? Depression is a state of absolute powerlessness.
Total numbness.
Right. You feel like you have zero agency, you are numb, and life is just happening to you. Revenge and anger, while society labels them as negative, inherently contain a feeling of taking your power back.
Oh, I see.
They require energy. They require a sense of self. Vibrationally moving from the numbness of despair into the heat of anger is a massive mechanical upgrade.
That makes a lot of sense, actually.
The text notes this tragic irony. Someone finally manages to claw their way out of a suicidal depression into a state of anger, and society instantly panics and says, you shouldn't be angry, we're enrolling you in anger management.
Wow. Society sees the person acting out, gets uncomfortable, and tries to medicate or therapy them right back down into the quiet, easily manageable box of depression.
Exactly.
Society prefers a quietly depressed person over a loudly angry one, completely missing the fact that the individual's internal energy is actually healing.
Society is reacting to the inconvenience of the behavior while completely ignoring the triumph of the energetic shift.
Right.
But the text makes this bold claim. If you understand this emotional ladder, if you allow yourself to feel the genuine relief of moving from despair to the agency of revenge, and then soften that into general anger, and then soften that into frustration, you can move out of the depths of depression in a matter of days.
That's incredible.
You don't get stuck in anger because you recognize it's just a stepping stone.
And once you consciously do that, you realize you are the one operating the machinery. You aren't a victim of your emotions. You're the one shifting the gears.
Exactly. You're in control.
Which brings us to the ultimate goal. If you've climbed that emotional ladder, if you've stopped asking everyone in Yuma for permission, what is the actual state you're trying to reach?
Right.
The text uses a classic New Age buzzword, balance your energy. But it completely redefines what balance actually means. It argues that balancing your energy has absolutely nothing to do with finding a compromise with your spouse or your boss or your family.
It has nothing to do with them.
Right. It means bringing yourself into alignment with your own desires and what the text calls your vibrational escrow.
Vibrational escrow is such a brilliant concept.
I love that term.
Think of it as a holding account. Every time you've ever experienced contrast and launched a rocket of desire, Source immediately created that reality and put it in escrow.
It's just sitting there.
It is sitting there, fully formed, just waiting for your personal emotional frequency to match it so the funds can be released to you.
But the absolute fastest way to freeze that escrow account, according to the material, is to demand that other people change their behavior.
Yes, that is the ultimate block.
It bluntly states that if you require someone else to act differently so that you can feel better, you are in, and this is a direct quote, deep doo.
It's a funny phrase, but it exposes our most common trap. I mean, we walk around saying, I would feel so much better if my partner would just communicate differently, or I'd be happy if my kids would just behave.
We do it all the time.
But the framework argues that this puts you in a permanently powerless position. You cannot control what they do. They have their own lived contrast, their own rockets of desire, and their own frequency gaps.
And the harsh truth the text points out is that even the people who love you most will eventually let you down because they are focused on their own expansion.
Right. They have their own lives.
We have this terrible habit of calling people selfish when they prioritize their own alignment. But the text calls us out and says, when we accuse someone of being selfish, what we are really demanding is, never mind your selfish nature, you need to abandon your internal guidance system and tend to mine.
Precisely. We want them to adjust their vibration to soothe our resistance, which is impossible.
Completely impossible.
So the text gives us a very precise physiological way to test if we are actually in alignment with our own escrow or if we're falling into the trap of judging others.
Oh, right. The physical sensation test.
Yes. It asks you to contrast two specific physical sensations. The first is sitting quietly in a restaurant, observing a total stranger, and having a sweet thought of appreciation about them. When you do that, you literally feel a warm, bubbling sensation.
Like a lightness.
Exactly. That is source energy flowing through you, confirming the thought.
Versus the second scenario. Let's say you look at someone in your environment and you find a completely justified, logically valid reason to condemn them.
Like they just cut you off in traffic.
Yeah, they're acting terribly. You might be 100% correct in your assessment. But the physical sensation you get when you condemn them is a hollow emptiness or a knot in your stomach.
It feels awful.
It does. And the profound insight here is that the empty feeling in your stomach isn't proof that they are bad. The emptiness is your internal alarm bell warning you that you have just deviated from your own source.
Yes.
Source does not condemn, so the moment you do, you pinch off your own connection.
It's entirely about your own alignment.
So what does this all mean? Let's take it out of the abstract.
Yeah.
Think of it like acoustic resonance. Imagine you are a tuning fork, and you are trying to tune yourself to a specific frequency, say a note at 440 hertz.
Okay.
But instead of just holding your own frequency, you are running around a crowded room trying to force every other object in the room to vibrate at 440 hertz so that you can feel resonance.
That sounds like a nightmare.
It's exhausting, and it's impossible. It's like trying to tune your guitar to a piano that is constantly rolling down a hill. You have to strike your own tuning fork. You have to hold your own perfect pitch, regardless of the noise everyone else is making.
This raises an important question, though, about what radical self-reliance actually looks like in practice.
Right.
Because if you are the only one who can control your tuning fork, then your singular job in life is to practice holding that frequency under any and all conditions. And the text describes the result of this mastery beautifully. When you tune yourself, you become tuned in, tapped in, turned on. You aren't reacting to the world anymore. You are operating from a state of pure knowing.
And that frequency is contagious. The material argues that when you achieve that state, you start oozing pure positive energy.
Mm-hmm.
Anyone who even gets a little whiff of you is uplifted by your presence.
Yeah.
But here's the key. They aren't uplifted because you are trying to fix their problems. They are uplifted simply because you are standing in your own perfect alignment, and that resonance is powerful.
Exactly. You lead purely by example. You thrive in your health, your clarity, and your abundance. And when bad things inevitably happen to the people you love, you might dip into that contrast briefly, but you don't stay there.
You don't join them in the misery.
You don't wallow in it to prove you care. You quickly U-turn back to your own alignment because you know that holding a strong frequency of well-being is the only true way to offer value to anyone else.
This has been such a dense, fascinating ride today. Let's quickly gather up the critical pieces for you. We started by reframing the annoyances of life as contrast, the vital friction that forces us to launch internal rockets of desire.
Right.
We examined the massive danger of seeking external validation and how asking everyone in Yuma for permission causes you to lose your own quantifiable alignment.
Crucial point.
We broke down the mechanics of the emotional scale, exploring how using revenge and anger as temporary stepping stones can successfully pull you out of the powerlessness of depression. And finally, we looked at why tying your emotional stability to someone else's behavior freezes your vibrational escrow and lands you in deep dew.
It really is a comprehensive, airtight system for taking absolute 100% responsibility for your own emotional state. And I think the most powerful takeaway from this entire source material is the deeply reassuring message it leaves us with regarding our fear of failure.
Oh, I love this part.
The text states quite simply that you can never get your life wrong because you never get it done.
You can't get it wrong because you can't get it done. I love that so much.
It strips away all the pressure. Even if you are standing in a place in your life right now that feels like a massive mistake, the framework argues that it's simply not finished yet.
It's just middle of the story stuff.
Exactly. You are just in a heavy contrast phase. It's just fresh data. You haven't failed. You're just sifting. Make the U-turn, launch a new preference from where you stand, and the expansion continues. The process is infinite.
Which brings us right back to the frustration we started with today.
Yeah.
We talked about how aggravating it is to look at a chaotic situation and be told you create your own reality.
Yeah.
But based on the actual mechanics we've unpacked today, I want to leave you with one final thought to mull over. If it's truly impossible to get your life wrong, because your journey of contrast and preference is an endless, constantly updating process, how would adopting that exact belief right now in this moment change the way you view your single biggest current failure?